Hello, everybody. Welcome to my podcast. Today it's on trauma. Not everybody does have trauma, but some of us, and I know some of you who are listening to these podcasts, have experienced trauma. Trauma will come from abuse or forms of abuse. It will also come from being in a scary situation. For example, if you've had an accident or had a home invasion or any of these things that made you really frightened and scared, that will be the trauma that you now have got locked in your aura. And I want to talk about how to get rid of that from an energetic point of view. The trauma actually gets stuck because when it happens, we almost take a energetic breath and hold our breath and go, and it happens, and we hold it in the aura to deal with it later. However, later on doesn't always come, and we can be holding this on for decades. If you've had a traumatic childhood or been in any kind of abusive relationships when you were a child, had any abuse or trauma in relationships as an adult, you will be holding it in your aura, I'm sure. You might have gone to therapy, you might go to psychiatrists or psychologists, you might even have to take meds, you might have PTSD because of it. However, from an energy worker, which is the type of work I do, I would say that the traumas remained locked in your aura. I have done so much work on myself after my childhood and a very difficult adult relationship, which involved abuse as well. I was really surprised when I kept going back and it was still there and it was still tucked here and it was still over there. And I had done lots and lots of work on it. So don't feel you failed. I think trauma just really lodges in there deeply and it's actually hard to extract. It's hard to get rid of. In a way, we've said to ourselves we never want to go back to that place or feel it again, and perhaps we inadvertently make that mental thought that we won't go back there. You can find trauma everywhere in the aura, and I want to talk about that today. So, when you're doing your release work, you know where to go. The first place is every single chakra. Every main chakra is a possibility that you held the trauma there. When I did it on myself, it was in every chakra: base, sacral, navel, solar plexus, heart, throat, third eye, and crown. And I was really like, oh man, it's everywhere. But I diligently went back and released it with using my modalities out of every single chakra. It will also be in the mind. It will be in your mind that you can hold the trauma in your mind. So when you're thinking of release work, do it from your mind, whether you do your tapping or your meditation release, your rebirth type release, your breathing in and out release, however you like to do it, using your pendulum. When you do it, remember your mind is a place we will hold trauma because our mind remembers it on some level, even if we're trying to block it out. The other place that was interesting was the astral body, and that's one of the layers that comes out from the aura. And many of us will keep our trauma in the astral body. It's also where the block is. So if you've got a block in your astral body from trauma, that's where it'll be, always be in that one place. Even though the emotions are attached to it, like the fear and the anger and the hurt and the terror, which you would expect to be also in the emotional body. I found the trauma, in my knowledge of it, was mostly in the astral, so go there as well. Trauma is really bad for the aura, and it also doesn't make you feel good, and you'll end up being frightened of lots of things almost irrationally, which is really annoying and frustrating because it's like being on a little circular thing that you can't get off. But once you release the trauma, the energy of that from the actual aura, things can get better. They really can. I also suggest that you take Bach flower remedy. The rescue remedy one will be very good for you. I would take it as much as you feel and as for long as you feel, because that will help to release the trauma. And I think Mimulus is one of the Bach that's really good for known fears. Go and look up the Bach remedies, see if there's one there that you think resonates with you, and take that. That will help you vibrationally release it. For me, I found the tapping the best in terms of that I will tap it out. And I also use the hypnosis going down because I think the trauma's caught in my subconscious, obviously. So I'll go down and hypnotize myself and to let that trauma go. You might even want to go to a hypnotherapist to help you to get rid of it from those sort of areas. Then I do my breath work. I breathe the trauma out, breathe in, breathe out, breathe in, breathe out, and just keep doing that. Sometimes your body will react quite strongly when you do these kind of rebirth breath works, and you need to be aware of that. Some people also use just the release work in the meditation. They meditate. When they're in meditation, they ask their guides to take the trauma from the body. I've asked that. I've asked my guides and my God to help release the trauma, that I don't need to be carrying it anymore. That it happened, I learnt my lessons. It helped me with my work, but now I don't want to be carrying the trauma with me all the time. Trauma is something people just don't talk about down here very much. If you go to war, they do perhaps, or if you're in a huge big crisis, tsunami or something like that, they talk about it. But they don't talk about it in your normal life, and I think there's quite a lot of trauma in normal life. It can be traumatic when your marriage breaks down or your partner dies. It can be traumatic when your whole world falls apart. Perhaps you lose your house or money or your career. It can be traumatic when things happen in your life that scare you. You could be in a bank and someone comes in to rob the bank. There's a lot of trauma that's still around us, and these things are quite traumatic for you. If you are in any abusive relationship, particularly if it's ongoing, you will collect more and more trauma from that. There's lots of trauma that comes from abuse, and people know about abuse, but they don't talk about the trauma that comes from the abuse, and that's what we want to get rid of. I suggest you do a lot of work on this. I suggest you keep hammering away. I've been doing it years and years and years, getting rid of it, and it is going away and it is releasing. And I don't want to carry the trauma in my aura because it's not good for the aura. It's usually got a lot of fear and terror and some anger in it too, because it's not a good thing that happened to you. It's not something you can also talk about very much. I haven't been able to talk to many people about the work I do in this area. They can understand if I'm releasing some anger or, I don't know, some other disappointment or something like that, or grief. People, you can talk about that, but trauma is something that most people don't talk about. They're pretty uncomfortable with it, actually, particularly if you've got a lot. They don't really want to know about it that much. It's because they don't know what to say to you. I think they care, but they don't know how to help you. So this is maybe an area you need to help yourself. And also you can go to an energy worker, someone does Reiki, and also ask them to ask that when they do the healing, that the trauma is released. So we can have physical trauma, emotional, mental, psychological trauma. And I think we can have past life trauma that we've also brought in as well. That traumas from other lives that we're still carrying in the aura that we didn't really fix up or do any work with. Do the work. I think it's going to really help you. I feel more calm and more relaxed, and these things are not running my life, because trauma can run your life because the fear just comes up or the trauma comes up and you can't do it. And if you have PTSD, you try to use some of these other modalities I'm talking about today, as well as what you're doing with your therapy or your medication or whatever you're finding works for you. It's always finding what works for you, and if we're all different, some things will work for one person and not for the other. I wish you luck with this. If you suffered trauma, my heart really goes out to you, because it really colours every day and every night. And I think sometimes if you've had trauma, it will be more noticeable for you at night. It seems to be when the demons come, because we're not so distracted. So tap, meditate, ask your angels to take the trauma away, do healing on yourself, get healing for yourself, use everything you can. And I'm sending you lots of love, because you're going to need lots of love, that little aura of yours, and lots of light.